Welcome to our Centered podcast. I'm excited for this episode today. We have Sam Song, the COO of City to City, Southern California.
All right.
And dude, I just feel like you are like the mastermind of planning things. Like we just spent time, like what, a day and a half planning, envisioning. Yep. And every time that I'm with you, Sam, I walk away like, I need better plans. I need more strategy in my life. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today. I think that's where we could start.
Yeah.
And so
Sam, I have a question for you. How do we make plans without leaving the spirit behind?
Well, this framework comes from a mentor of mine that have been part of, I would say, 3 global movements. And so a lot of it was, and also I believe this is what Campus Crusade does. And so there's a framework called spirit, strategy, and then structure.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And so everything starts with the spirit. And so we can make our plans, right?
Yeah.
But if it's not aligned to what we see God doing in this world.
Wow.
And so so there's a big difference between planning and strategy.
Okay.
I would say that our time together was a strategic moment, but it wasn't a planning session.
No.
Because we
That's
didn't
good.
leave there with like action steps or a clarified budget or programs. We
Yeah.
left there with a clearer picture of where collectively we want to get to,
Wow.
and also how we are going to choose to get there.
Wow.
So I was walking you guys through a process called strategic design, but I didn't tell you guys that. But
It worked. It worked. I walked out like, I get the vision now. I want to live on mission for this.
You were
like,
ready.
Whatever.
You're in. Let's go.
You snuck me into it. It worked, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it all starts, especially in the work that we do, is we're not just building a business, we're not building an organization or
That's
a network.
Okay.
But we're trying to see what God is doing and be a part of that.
Right.
Wow.
And so all of our strategy and plans and structure is actually the small P, right? So I used to also work at a company called Visioneering, and the founder there, Mel McGowan, would say, you could create your master plan, but we need to make sure it's aligned to the master's plan.
Come
Ooh.
on.
Right.
That's a
It's
bar.
always looking at like not what are we doing, it's what is God doing and what can we do to be a better contributor and be aligned to what he's doing.
Wow.
And so in the other world that I come from, Pastor Rick, he would say, we're not going out and doing our plan and asking God to bless our plans.
Come on.
We're actually trying to be a part of what he's already doing and blessing in the world.
So good.
And so it always got to start with spirit. And really the spirit side, it's not about, of course we're going to pray. We're going to read the word and we're going to just, seek the Lord. But it's actually being out in the streets, and the spiritual practice before you start thinking about strategy is noticing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so you guys may not know this, but, the whole point of our time together was for me to better understand who the leaders are.
That's good.
So I was actually studying you guys and the way that you're responding to the things. So that's kind of like my little Jedi kind of thing. But for me, in order for us to have a strong strategy of how we want to move forward collectively, it's not about what are we going to do, but who do we have in the room.
Wow.
And so, in my brain, I have different categories. I'm like, all right, boom, 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 boom.
Sure.
And now I think the follow-up conversations is like, man, how do we help every single person, these incredible leaders, step into their leadership, step into their calling, and then bring their gifts and talents to the collective effort we're doing.
That's so good. I called Enrique on one of our podcasts Obi-Wan, so that makes you Yoda, I guess. You taught them the Jedi mind tricks.
no.
Okay,
Got the whole crew.
but I am so interested in that. Like, Sam, talk to me a little bit. So, by the way, when we say Rick, we're talking Rick Warren.
Yeah.
And you were helping to lead like the purpose-driven initiative, that kind of stuff. What you're saying is like the strategy on purpose. You're studying people while you're developing. Talk to me a little. That seems so counterintuitive to the way the world generally works
For
when we're
sure.
trying to get a plan across.
For sure.
Aren't most leaders trying to just get people to do their plan?
Yeah. So strategy is not a plan.
Yeah, that's good.
Say it again.
Come on.
Say it again.
So strategy is not a plan, right? So if I were to try to, so sometimes people talk about this idea called strategic planning,
Okay.
but I call it strategy and planning. And so
Okay.
strategy is literally your story. It's your theory of change. It's what you believe
Wow.
will happen if you were to do this,
Okay.
right? What a plan is a set of experiments, right? Of saying, hey, let's make a plan, set some budget, set some time, set some people to actually try to do this thing and see if it actually proves our strategy to be correct.
Wow.
Or does it give us new information to refine our strategy?
Like Ezra and Nehemiah rebuilding the wall, or wow, that's so good.
But when you look on Instagram, you see all these posts, they're like, hey, make a 3-year vision, 1 year, there's all these things, but
Sure.
it's same like with discipleship, right? Like how you define it really matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how you define what a strategy is really matters.
So
How you define a plan really matters.
So I've watched that number go lower and lower. I used to hear leaders when I first got into ministry, and Kimmy, you've seen this because you've been leading alongside me quite a long time now.
Yeah.
It was like develop your 10-year plan.
Oh, yes.
Now then it was like develop your 5-year plan. Then it was develop your 3-year plan. Now it's like what is your yearly plan? And what I've heard is like the world changes so quick now
Yeah.
that we can't plan for like that long of a time. Yet I will say, China as a country said they have a 50-year plan, and that seems to be working for them. So, like, talk to me a little bit in the tension of like, is it that we can only make short-term plans? Are people seeing that wrong as the world gets faster, things change? What's going on with that?
Yeah, I would say that, again, what do you mean by plan?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So plans are usually just projects.
That's good.
And so based
Wow.
upon the project scope is going to determine the plan. And so, like I shared at our directors kind of summit, a lot of people, like, they say, let's make a 10-year vision. And the question I always ask is, how far can you really see?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good.
So what happens is people think because they read a book that says you need a 10-year plan, that you got to create a 10-year plan.
Okay.
But not every leader has the abilities to see that far ahead. So based upon your leadership capacity, not capability,
That's good.
you could actually right size how far you could plan ahead.
Wow.
So I know people that are like more like wired as visionary futurists
Okay.
that see the trend lines and see what's about to happen. So like maybe I don't know about I don't know enough about China, but but those who have a big enough of a vision, right? And have and proven that they could actually see that far ahead.
Wow.
That's where they determine the time, and then based upon
yeah.
the time, then they create plans for it.
Okay.
In the real estate, construction, the architecture world, we always have a phrase called anything, whatever's feasible is feasible. And so, you could have a 10-year picture of what you want to see in the world, but change is not only a constant, but it's an accelerant now.
Yeah.
So it's an accelerate. The rate of change is accelerating, and so for you to think that you could predict the future in 10 years, I feel there's only a few people in this world that actually could see that far ahead.
Okay.
So I would say instead of asking yourself, what's my 10-year plan, it's more asking yourself, how far can I see clear enough
Yeah.
that I could actually have some confidence that that's where we're headed.
Wow.
That's so good.
Kimmy, in as you think through like the next generations coming behind us, especially a generation that grew up very differently than Sam and I grew up.
Yeah.
What are you seeing as like things that we need to project or plan for or have strategy for? And maybe Sam could answer some thoughts or questions around that.
Yeah.
I know we're getting a lot of younger people tuning in and getting connected with City to City. You have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, our generation that's upcoming wants to stay away from being chronically online and also is chronically online. And
Whoa,
so
okay.
online is the platform. Online is the connection. I think people have said that a few times, but no one's really taken it that seriously.
Okay.
I see a lot of young people saying, my friend online, this person online. And so connection is happening in these spaces, which we would call third spaces today,
Yeah.
in which we did a podcast about this, a third space. But this is now a third space that happens online. It happens in a space that's not physical, right?
Okay.
And because of that, I think there are things that we've seen not work out well and things that we have seen work out well.
Okay.
Where there's Discord and there's, these different places where people can connect, but they're not so much into doing the church online. They want to come in person. And so we have to kind of read that, I think, in a lot of ways.
So are you saying, like, how do we project and plan using online strategy to drive people to, I mean, the way like 1st and 2nd John call it is this idea of like face to face.
Yes.
And I've always heard it said from my pastor, face to face fills the space, right? Is that what you're saying is like how, because they live in this world,
Yes.
but how do we use that to drive like in-person or authentic connection?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Sam?
So if I were to take this specific use case, right? So it's the next generation who don't know life without an online life, right? So
That's true.
It's an integrated life where they're in, IRL in real life, but augmented by online realities. And so the connection is constant, right?
Okay.
And is asynchronous. So you could be in relationship. So when you're talking that, right now we could tackle the tactics.
Right.
So there are some symptoms that we're noticing, and we want to like whack-a-mole, like solve for that, solve for that, solve for that.
But that's like pulling weeds.
Yeah, that's like pulling weeds, but that could be planning because you're like,
Okay.
how are we going to tackle that issue?
Okay.
But what strategy does is like, what is a strategic document? I call it a field guide. So I have a strategic document of how I choose to live.
Okay.
And what's in my field guide are these guiding principles, right? That guide how I think and how I see the world.
Yeah.
But also I have these behavioral values. So when I'm thinking about your situation, we want to ask what they call the 5 whys. Why are they online? What are they looking for, and why do they want it? And then why do they really want it? And why do they really want it?
Wow.
Right? And so you want to kind of get down to the root and the systemic kind of environment that causes those things to happen. And so the most important and most profound and the quote that I hold on to, and this is not a scriptural thing or a spiritual thing, but it's from a consultant, from Edward Deming, is every system is perfectly designed for the results that it gets.
Wow.
Wow.
So if you have an outcome, most people try to tackle the outcome through plans instead of actually looking at what is the systemic issue and what is the trend line that's going to create the new environment. So right now, Discord, we have Twitch, we have now online shopping, live shopping. There's a lot of things that's outside of the church world.
Like buying things while you're watching
Exactly,
something. That's
right?
crazy.
But at the same time, there's a movement in New Zealand where they're creating these beautiful spaces, physical spaces that people are paying to be a member of, to experience it. There's a movement in Europe called the Offline Club, where they're taking like these cathedral church buildings that have no longer a church, but it's an event space, and they have created environments where you show up, you check all your digital things, in a closet or one of those holders that the kids are used to when they go to school, and what they have is puzzles and paper and things like that for them to do things together.
Wow.
So strategy is noticing those kind of trends and patterns and understanding like what are the dynamics that are being created. So you see how it's not like what are we going to do, but how are we noticing? What is the trend line? How are we going to engage? And that's really determined by what are the principles that, so biblical principles in our context, right? That guide our decisions in our lives, but also behavioral values. Like this is why I behave in the way I behave.
Yeah.
This is why I show up in person, because there's a core value that exerts itself, expresses itself in behavior.
Wow.
So you see, like a lot of times we just want to tackle the problem, which is good because it could give you a little bit of relief.
Wow.
But it never solves.
You got to keep asking why and get to the system.
So what happens is ointment, right?
Wow.
Or it's a bandage, but it's not healing.
Yeah.
Or even a reconstruction of a system so that it doesn't keep going.
That's deep.
I saw this video online of a college teacher, and he did a social experiment like that. He had a box and he put all the kids' phones in there. He said, if you put your phone in this box, every time you come to class, I'll guarantee you an A in the class.
Ooh. Wow.
And what he found was with all those kids, he didn't have to actually do anything to guarantee the A. They were just paying attention.
Yeah.
And their grades got better in other classes. And so, the Bible talks a lot about like counting the cost, right? Thinking ahead. I wonder, Sam, like if we're trying to create spaces where people can engage through their online life in an offline, authentic space where they engage each other and the Spirit of God, how do we count the costs? Like, how do we look at that and build a plan to create spaces like that? You gave examples, but like as the church in America, what should we be counting right now to like decide to build something like that? Because it sounds like it's a need in what's coming and a reality. Like, talk to me a little bit. What do we need to be gathering? What do we need to be writing down and thinking through as we build a world like that?
Yeah, it would be, instead of using counting costs, it'd be trade-offs.
Trade-offs, okay.
So what are you going to replace in their life with something different?
Oh, that's good.
And it's not always a cost. It could also be an investment.
Oh, I like that.
So what happens is most churches, they always look at things as costs. So they're like, how is that going to, what is going to take? Who's going to, how much energy is going to take? How much time is going to take? How many volunteers? How much money?
They look at it as like a deficit. Okay.
So they have a paradigm that think that they have a finite amount of resources.
Okay.
And we could get all preacher on
Yeah. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Come on.
And so when you look at your budget, you look at kind of these initiatives that you want to do, you start looking not as cost centers, but as investment opportunities. And so when you're looking at so right now, I'm not answering your question. I'm helping you to kind of rethink how you think.
That's so good.
Right? And that's what strategy
You're doing
is.
the Jedi thing again.
Well,
Okay, Yoda.
The problem is not the phone. The problem is not the internet.
Yeah.
The problem is not enough physical spaces, or our kids have no attention, because they do have attention.
Yeah, they do.
You put a game in front of them and they could play it for hours.
Yep.
Right. So the issue is, right, when you keep digging in, is, are we giving them something that's worth their attention?
Come on.
Ooh.
That's so good.
Right. And when they're there, is it something that they want more of?
Yeah.
So is it something that speaks to the cravings of their soul? So what happens is, a lot of times we try to engage their mind and their heart, but we need to get to the soul. And so a lot of times we talk about isolation, right, and loneliness.
Wow.
Right. That's really the issue. Also, this hyper individualistic kind of mindset that if I can't figure it out on my own, I don't need no one, right? That kind of stuff.
Wow.
So that's where it's getting to. So I'm always going to get to, like, what is a root issue, not the symptom issue, because when you're trying to fight the symptoms, like, hey, let's figure out a box to put like these little tactics, right? These clever tactics, right? All it does is it keeps you busy.
Wow.
It doesn't make any progress. And so what we want to do is we want to think of things, because this conversation about online, offline, or being at church, not at church, being at a high church, right? It's always been there, but no one's actually asking the right question.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so Einstein would say, and this is a strategic frame that you could use, is you spend 55 minutes thinking about the question to be answered, and then it takes you 5 minutes to answer it.
Wow.
But what we do is we spend 5 minutes thinking about what needs to be solved or what the problem is, and then we spend 55 minutes solving the wrong problem.
Wow.
And then you're wondering, why are we not making any progress in society and our youth and in our culture? It's because we're not actually solving the right problem.
Wow.
Wow.
So, but the thing is, a lot of us as visionary leaders and kind of entrepreneurial church planners, we don't have the patience and the discipline for it.
Yeah.
So that's where you gotta lean on the Spirit and get us going all the way back to the Spirit before strategy. Because most church planners I've seen is they have a structure saying, I want this kind of model of a church.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna implement this strategy, and I hope God blesses it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so good.
But the question is not like, so for example, like the church, right? When they're trying to figure out what kind of church they want to create, that's not the first question.
No, it's not.
The question is, who is your neighbor?
Yeah. Yeah.
And who is God calling you to reach?
Yeah.
That's spiritual.
Wow.
It's loving God. So when you talk about vision, what's the actual question you're answering when you talk about vision is who is your vision, not what is your vision.
Yeah.
Right? So if your eyes are fixed on the kingdom and God, be thou art my vision, O Lord, unto thee, right?
Yes.
And then he gives you a vision for the world, right? For the neighbor, for the person that he's asking you to love, right? When you have that clarity, then you could build around it. So in the business world, they call it design thinking, human-centered design, where you put the person that you're trying to reach at the center and you build around that. But what happens is most church planners build a church and try to figure out how to reach people.
Yeah, yeah.
So those are like strategic ways to look at things.
Wow.
And it's very disruptive because seminaries and Bible colleges never teach any of that.
And it goes right back to what you said. You're not building anything that's worth their attention.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Wow, that man, I do think, Sam, as we wind this down, I do think we need a second part to talk through some of this.
Yeah.
But I also want to say to the people watching, like, this is what you get at City to City. Like, one of the greatest resources are simply the leaders of City to City, you and Enrique and others. Mm-hmm. And so I would say to the people watching, don't just watch this podcast. Yes, this is great information, but engage in the ecosystem, because what you're going to get is you're going to get some of this upside down thinking, this kingdom thinking that's going to really help you. I know, Sam, I walked away from a day and a half with you just wrecked. Like, Lord, there's so many things I need to get rid of, because I really, what I realized, I'm doing a lot of busy work, and I'm not doing a lot of kingdom thinking. I'm not building something worth people's attention. So I even went back to like our preaching calendar, our leadership, and some of that. And I was wow, Lord, there are things that need to change. So I do want to say, if you're watching this, like, jump in our ecosystem, whether it's a learning community or an incubator. Maybe you're ready to plant a church. Don't plant that church before you really know your neighbor or what you're planting it for. But thank you, Sam. This has just been a blessing to us, and I know a blessing to the people watching. And I know everybody's going to be like, let's have more, let's have more, let's have more.
Yeah.
So maybe I would ask this as you finish this episode. Maybe you would just stop, and maybe you're a journaler, or you write it down on your phone, or however you take account. But maybe you just begin to think, like, what are the busy work things I'm doing in my life that aren't really getting anywhere?
Yeah.
Is there something else you would encourage people to do? Like, just a place to start, a small thing they could begin with.
So one of the things that I would just highly recommend is you don't have to be like me. You could partner with people like me.
Yeah.
If God's gifted you to be a visionary leader, or to be a relational leader, or to be a shepherd, again, you don't have to be everything to all people.
So good.
And so if you need people who think like me, and this is why Larry and I and the team work really well, because we're not the same.
Yes.
But what we do is we honor each other. We learn from each other. We lean on each other. People, take the shot when it's their turn to take the shot or to lead.
Yeah.
But when it's a different kind of style. But one of the biggest things about busyness is because most churches try to maintain the kingdom, not advance the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so think about how you want to move and make progress versus maintaining what you already have.
Yeah.
So good.
And it feels like it's more work, but it's less work if you think strategically, because you're no longer thinking like, because what happens when you advance the kingdom, it requires you to lean on everyone else because it's bigger than yourself. So don't try to do something that only you can do. Be a part of something that we together could do. So when you find yourself busy, ask yourself, am I hiding? Am I assuming? Am I afraid? What am I avoiding? Because usually those are the indicators. That busyness is the indicators that you're actually, more like you're avoiding, you're assuming, you're hiding. Than actually you're making progress. So that would be my last kind of tidbit.
Start there, and we'll share more. So thank you again, Sam, for tuning in. And I'll just say this, we'll catch you on the next episode. Keep tuning in to the Center Podcast as we stay centered in the gospel, as we really think about what God has called us to do to advance the kingdom together. So thanks for tuning in.